Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Phil Thompson, and I want to welcome you to today's How You Can Leverage Census Bureau's new Building Permit Visualization Tool webinar. Building permits are one of the earliest indicators of economic activity. For decades, building permit data has been available online in a very unusable, clunky format. The Census Bureau's new visualization and extraction tool empowers users to engage this rich, sub-county level source of information about the critical first step in construction. It's the building permit. This webinar will demonstrate how anyone, academic researchers, builders, contractors, and mainstream media can engage this tool to understand building permit trends across one or more multiple markets. Just to let you know, this webinar will be recorded. The webinar recording and transcript will be available between 5 to 10 business days after this presentation. If we experience any technical delays, please utilize the chat feature to notify us of issues should any arise, and we will do our best to address them. And lastly, at the end of the presentation, we will open the lines for a question and answer session. To allow everyone an opportunity to ask a question, we request that you ask one question and one follow-up question. I would like to introduce our speaker, Nathan Croy. Nathan is a lead analyst in the residential construction branch. I now turn it over to you, Nathan.
All right. Thanks, Phil. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. It's a little late on a Thursday, but yeah, excited to go over the building permit survey and our new tool with everyone. So let's dive right in. So first we'll cover just sort of about the building permit survey in case you're not familiar with the data we collect. So the building permit survey provides national, state, and local statistics on new privately owned residential construction. So it's national, state, and then we also have place level, county, as well as MSAs, CBSAs. Data collected include the number of buildings, number of housing units, and permit valuation by size of structure. So we have 4 categories: single family construction, 2-unit buildings, 3 to 4-unit buildings, and then 5 or more unit buildings to capture some of the larger apartments. So we capture the number of buildings, then all the housing units, especially within the larger structures, and then the valuation. We can talk a little bit more about the valuation later, but that's basically a valuation of construction and not a sales price or an appraisal or anything like that. That's a question we get a lot. So it's a monthly survey of 9,000 permit issuing places, and then our annual census captures an additional 11,000 places around the country. So our goal is to get data at least annually from every place in the United States that issues building permits. So around 20,000 places in total. And it provides a designated principal economic indicator, and it's the only source of current and consistent small area data on new authorizations for residential construction, which is basically a lot of words to say that it's one of the only construction data sources that does go all the way down to that place level, so cities, towns, villages, things of that nature. The Survey of Construction, which is also in our area, they do a lot of great data, but that's more at the U.S. and regional level, just because of collection limitations of their survey design. So that's a really nice thing about our surveys, to get down to that deep, granular level. So before this tool, we put out text files every month with our data as new data is released. And so we ended up with around 5,500 individual text files on our census website. I can show you those to you real quick, just to sort of see where everything's coming from. So basically we have an FTP site, has all these folders, and within there, just file after file. For every category, multiple files are released every month. So yeah, it was a little unwieldy. It was a lot of good data. It's just a lot of data to wade through, especially when looking for a time series for just one place or just a few counties and things of that nature. Federal Reserve, we do a lot with them, and they put some of our data into their FRED data tool. That's the St. Louis Federal Reserve that maintains that tool. That's a really nice option. It has good data, but it's a little more disparate, like it might have one state, maybe a few of the larger MSAs, but not really a way to do like custom data sets of just the places you're interested in. HUD, Housing and Urban Development, we do a lot with them. They're co-sponsors for a lot of our surveys. We send them data every month that they put into their own tool. which can be really useful, but doesn't have valuation as one of the limitations, as well as struggling with larger data queries. Texas A&M Real Estate Center, they do a lot with our data as well. They put it into some custom data sets, but nothing quite like our tool, and nothing quite as visual. But yeah, we have a lot of partners out there. We also will compile custom files for data users who had certain things, but in total there's around like 8 people in the residential construction branch, so it can be tough, especially during busy processing times of the month, to find time to run those custom queries and get that data out there to people. So our goals with this tool, and really this project in general, were to consolidate all these disparate files into one, standardizing naming and structure at the same time. As you can imagine, over the decades that the building permit survey has been around, some of the file nomenclature, the standards, the structure have all changed quite a bit. So even if you're going through files manually, they still might be quite different, so it adds another layer of complexity when trying to dive into the data. We wanted a tool that can cater to diverse user needs, so we wanted something that someone without much experience with this data or Tableau or any sort of tools, they could maybe find some of the data for their local area that they were just curious in, and then we wanted it to be useful all the way up to the more power users who wanted custom queries for multiple locations and multiple data types. We also wanted to be able to be frequently updated as new data is released. We release new data on the 17th workday of every month. So our goal was to be able to get that new data into the tool on the day of its release. There's some more functionality we'd like to add in the future. Table download, so you can pull query custom tables within the tool, but a really important goal that we're hoping to get implemented soon is to be able to download those custom tables into your own CSV or text Excel format, so then you can run that with whatever programs you may want. We also, part of this project, we've come out the other end with a really large file. We basically combined all those 5,500 files into one. I know in the past that's something that we've had a lot of folks ask for, was if they could have access to that large file. So the answer is yes, we've got it all together. Working on a few tweaks just to make sure it's usable. It ends up being around a 400 megabyte zip file that extracts to around 3.3 gigabytes. So it's pretty huge, probably not for everyone, but we definitely want to put it out there just for people who want that nice giant raw data set. We'd also like to add a little bit more historical data. Tool right now goes back to 1990 for all data where available. We do have some data back to the 1980s that we would like to get in the tool eventually, but it's just things were done a little differently back then, so it's a little harder to implement it, but for now we do have 30 years of data, which is really nice. We'd also like to add more geographic types, MSA and CBSA in particular. Those are super useful geographies, data sets that you see referenced a lot. It's just sort of an added complexity since the MSA boundaries and the names themselves are always shifting and changing with population flows and the metro and micropolitan centers. So we're just, working on making that easy to implement without sort of having to call things, if we run back the names from where they are now into the past, it's not necessarily accurate. So just a layer of complexity to work on. So this data can be useful in lots of ways. Permit issuance is one of the earliest indications of population flows and economic activity. Of course, if people are flocking to an area, they need places to live. Locate areas with growth in various housing types, so single versus multifamily. That's, of course, a story we've heard a lot about the last couple of years, and, of course, even long before that, back in the early 2000s. But, yeah, so single versus multifamily, metro areas versus more suburban and different construction types. Can be really nice to see how those differ between areas. Trends in permit issuance, which is useful for determining where labor and material demands may be in the future. That is a nice thing about looking at permits is they're kind of one of the first steps being pulled, as we've mentioned. So usually even before groundbreaking, before a lot of the materials have been lined up, maybe even before the labor's been found. So it's sort of the earliest process you can see. And then for 2020, 43% of construction was started the same month as permit issuance, and by 3 months out, 94% have started. So sort of right in there, it all happens pretty quick. Once that permit's pulled, which makes sense. If you paid money for the permit, you might as well get the construction started. And then we're going to run over some examples. I'll kind of show you the table and how some of that works now. So this is our website, our building permit survey website. Easiest way to find it, it's not actually simple to find from census.gov. You have to wade through a few different clicks, but search engine of choice, just type in building permit survey, and it's pretty much guaranteed to be your first result. It'll take you straight to this page. It's got all our data. It's got information about the survey, our historical data, but most importantly, it has this new tab we've added, data visualizations. So if you click on that, then the visualization will go ahead and load any second now. Usually it's quicker. Of course, that's the way these things work. That's all right. I'm going to pull it up here on our internal server anyway, so I can show a few different things that aren't quite implemented in the public version yet. So basically, here's the tool as it sits. The default view is an annual view since 1990 of all states for their total permits issued. So just at first glance, you can see Texas being way up there these days, followed by Florida, California, North Carolina, and then Arizona and Georgia down there. And so basically the layout is, well, I guess it's the most basic. We have the time series view here, and then down here, this little table with an arrow pointing to it. If you click that, then you get this lovely table view, which basically has all of our data. It's got the survey date, the geography there on the left, and then all the different categories of construction that we have. But that can be a little overwhelming. So that's why we have this nice simple time series as well. So first example, let's go ahead and look at how single and multifamily, as we had mentioned, might differ between a couple states with a lot of construction activity. So let's take a look at Arizona, California, and Texas. So you can see their total units. So this is single and multifamily. You can see how those vary. Texas up there. See, for 2020, they had 230,000 total units permitted. Arizona was 60,000. California with 106,000. The other nice thing, especially when you're looking at a lot of different data, like all the states or a bunch of counties, if you click over here under the legend, it'll highlight any individual place, so you can see that out from the other ones. So if we go to single-family units, we'll see it's pretty similar to the total units, Texas, California, and Arizona. And if you come down here to multi, though, you'll see California is a lot closer to Texas for the multifamily. California's got a lot of multifamily housing going on. And you can see Arizona's actually been fairly flat, certainly increasing, but on the multifamily, but certainly compared to the total units, you can see there a little bit of a different trend. So just interesting to see the way the way single and multifamily construction might differ between places. Reset this view. So the other thing we can do, we can look at counties within a state. So the county drop down, I know a lot of people come over to the county drop down or the place drop down, but we need to select that under the geographic type first. I will say if you immediately go to the geographic type and choose county or place, it's going to try and load all the counties or all the places for the states that are being displayed. So, for instance, if I was to select county right now, I'd be trying to load every county in the U.S. for the last 30 years for all the states. So it's quite a heavy workload. So best to sort of drill down through the states first and then select county. So in this case, we're going to be looking at some counties in Virginia. So I'll select Virginia here in the drop-down. Then come over here and then select county. And there we go. We can see all the counties in Virginia, and you can hover over them. Got the tooltips here. So we can see Chesterfield County was one of the largest counties, Loudoun County as well, Henrico County, and then Fairfax County. So you can kind of see how those differ. You can also click on any place within the time series itself to highlight that place the same way you can within the filter there. So that can be useful as well. If you see Henrico, you know, they're the third busiest in 2020, but how does that compare over the last 30 years? That can be a useful thing. Next, we will look at places within a state. So let's go ahead, let's dive into Arizona here. Arizona's been particularly busy. We've heard a lot about the growth in the desert Southwest there. So let's see what areas in Arizona might be growing these days. So we can select county here, and we see Maricopa County is by far and away the busiest county there in Arizona. But if you weren't familiar with the cities and places within Arizona, then you might wonder what makes up Maricopa County. So we can select Maricopa County, select place under geographic type, and there we have all the places in Maricopa. So for those who know Arizona, no surprise, Phoenix is just running away with it, but also Mesa, Arizona isn't doing too bad, and then Buckeye as well down there. That's a nice way, and like I had mentioned before, everything's in the table view here. So you come over here, Arizona, Maricopa County, and then all these place names are right here. Total buildings, total units, total valuation, single family, multifamily, all are different categories. So that's really nice. And that's where that download functionality is going to really be useful. And that should be out soon. We just have to set up our own server with some census technical things. But yeah, so we're really excited about that. Next, we'll look at year-to-date, which you'd think on a time series might be a little messy, and it is, but it can actually be a pretty powerful tool. So let's first look at monthly, and let's look at all the states. Let's look at 2021. Then let's look at multifamily units here. And so you can see it's a little jagged here looking at multifamily monthly this year, which you expect. You know, typically you have large multifamily projects permitted, and then there might be a little bit of a lull, then maybe some other large projects permitted. You can certainly see Florida, Texas, and California, perhaps like the busiest. Washington's catching up, but it's hard to tell from this time series how that might actually aggregate over the course of the year and where might be the busiest places. But if you do year to date, it's a really nice representation: Texas, Florida, California, and then New York and Washington, which wasn't necessarily obvious from looking at the previous view. So year to date there can definitely be useful in some ways. And again, as mentioned, all over here in the table view as well. Next, we'll just look at a little bit of our valuation data. People tend to, you hear most about the unit count and everything, but the valuation data can also be interesting when looking at different areas and how single and multi costs may compare. So let's look at California and Texas. This is their total units permitted. And their total valuation, you can see, follows the total units pretty similarly. But if you come down to multifamily units, you can see Texas, 72,000 in 2020, and California with 47,000 multifamily units permitted. But then if you come here to valuation, so you can actually see that California, the total valuation of those permits they issued is actually more than Texas, despite Texas having quite a few more multifamily units. So that's just sort of interesting. It can give you an idea of construction costs, both labor and material, and how much builders are estimating these projects are going to cost when they're putting in these permit applications. So that can be really nice too. And then I did want to show just sort of the table download, what that'll look like when it's available, which again should be shortly. So we'll just do all the states here. We've got all the state data from 1990 to 2020. Which again, even something as simple as this wouldn't have been super easy to pull before the way we had. So download, and on the public page, the download is down here in the bottom right. This is just our internal server here, so the download button's in a slightly different place, but same functionality. But download, cross tab, very last one, time series table. Go ahead, download that. Should pull up in Excel in just a second. If my Excel is behaving, there we go. Just auto-fit these columns. And there you can see, so all the data that was just in that table we were looking at right here, state name, and if you had counties or places selected within that, it would also have all of that data, total, single, multi, then all our other categories as well, both reported and our other categories. So reported is only data we received. So in the event of non-response, it's a 0, even though it's unlikely to be a 0. And then all our other estimates are estimates with imputation, which is typically the main numbers you see. But yes, you can see all that's right there, and so that'd be great to pull into ArcGIS, Tableau, Power BI, whatever. software program of choice. So that's really nice as well. And I think that was the main thing I wanted to show you about the tool. Again, that can be navigated to right from our website, the Data Visualizations tab. And yeah, I think that's it for now. If anyone has any questions, by all means, let us know, and I'll turn it back over to Phil. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, thank you, Nathan, for the informative presentation on the building permits data and the visualization tool that you use to access the tool. I found this pretty informative. And thank you, everyone, for your interest in our data and for attending today's webinar. But now, before we begin our question and answer session, please take note of the contact information that Nathan is about ready to provide to you. And I believe you may have some contact information in your presentation, Nathan.
Of course. Sorry about that, Phil. I was getting ahead of myself. I saw Jill's question there in the chat, and I was all ready to give her an answer. But yes, absolutely. There's my contact information, both for my branch and myself, my direct line as well as my email address. Feel free to reach out anytime, whether about the tool or permits or construction in general. But back over to you, Phil.
Okay. All right. Well, great, Nathan. Maybe you take care of Jill here real quick. But as a reminder, as we're focusing on our question and answer session on today's topic, we will be accepting questions related to today's topics only. So if you have questions on other topics, feel free to send an email to us at census.askdata@census.gov. And so now we would like to open up the lines for the Q&A portion of the presentation. So let's check in with the operator. The operator, can you provide instructions for listeners to ask for questions?
Thank you. We will now begin the question and answer session. If you would like to ask a question, please press *1, unmute your phone, and record your name. Your name is required to introduce your question. If you need to withdraw your question, press *2. Again, to ask a question, please press *1. Thank you.
Good stuff. So I'll go ahead then. Jill, to your question. Jill had asked, does the online table allow for sorting, or does the user need to download and do the sorting in Excel? Yeah, so you can sort within the tool itself. Absolutely. So I sort of showed that. So this is just looking at all states' annual data. So if you click, for instance, total buildings, it'll sort by the largest years down. Now, it is a sub-sorting based still on the state name, so it'll show you the busiest months within that state itself. But yes, it absolutely can do that, and you can do that for anything. So total units probably being the obvious choice there. So Alabama, for instance, you can see 2006 was their busiest, 2005, 2004, and so on. Connecticut, 1998, go figure, was the second busiest year of permit issuance in the last 30 years that they have had. So no, that can be really useful as well. You're absolutely right, and you can do that on any of the categories here, as well as if you wanted to change the state names or things of that nature, you could also do that for sure.
So, operator, do we have any questions in the queue?
Show no questions at this time.
So someone asked, do the permits include all permits issued or just complete permits? Yeah, so we capture at permit issuance. So our goal is to try and capture the data as early in the process as possible. So we don't follow through necessarily to the permit being complete or the construction being complete, groundbreaking, occupancy, anything like that. We're just looking at that permit being issued. I think we've done studies in the past. Typically, the amount of permits that go from issuance through to completed construction is pretty high, in the high 90%. And ones that don't make it through might just be because there are alterations or additions or changes to the plans, and the permit might have been reissued or something of that nature. But yeah, we're trying to just get those at the earliest stage. Our survey of construction does do more of a life cycle from permit issuance to construction, groundbreaking, starts, construction, and then sales, and things of that nature. So they do a lot more data with the life cycle, but that's a much larger in terms of geographic level survey, so just the U.S. and regions. But yeah, they're following a little more the life cycle. But yeah, we're just looking at that initial permit issuance for sure. Then I guess I'll also, I can go ahead and mention where to find our release dates. So from our main building permits page here on the census site, on the right-hand side, we have our release schedule. And so our revised permits are released on the 17th workday of every month. And so it's got all those dates here because 17th workday isn't really obvious, and workdays aren't necessarily something a lot of stuff's based on. So really nice, got all those there through the end of this year, and then that'll be updated soon with all our 2022 releases. But revised permits, we try to get those out by 8 a.m. And for the tool right now, we're trying to have that refreshed by 11:30 a.m. So around 3 hours after, we're hoping to get that process a little quicker as we learn a little bit more about the different steps required to go from getting that data on our website to pulling it into the master file to refreshing the data in Tableau to getting it through our media promotion team and everything like that. So that is a great place to be able to find that data as well. And as far as permits issued as well, I'll also mention over here the new residential construction section, just on the left-hand tab from the building permit survey page. We have length of time from authorization to start and start to completion, which can also be useful. This is based on a lot larger sample, or I guess a smaller sample for our survey of construction data, but this can be really useful too. So if you're looking at number of months from authorization of building permit to the start, then you can see down here for 2020 that typically single-family homes were started with within 1 month, and then multifamily typically within 2 months. Even larger, which I was kind of surprised by, 20 or more unit multifamily buildings, still construction is typically started within 2 months of that permit being issued. So that's another good data resource there as well, and all sorts of good things here. Annual characteristics of housing as well can be really useful. So lots of stuff on our website for sure. Right. Well,
okay, so the operator, do we have any other? Operator, do we have any questions waiting in the queue?
No, sir. We have no questions in queue.
Okay. I've got a question for you, Nathan. Something I've kind of wondered a little bit, but do you track building permits after they've been authorized?
Yeah, so the Survey of Construction tracks them after they've been issued. So you can find their data here, which again is some of that start to completion. But the really cool thing with the Survey of Construction is the characteristics of new housing. So they've got a lot of, so as far as single family homes completed, you can see all these different characteristics, construction methods, number of bedrooms, bathrooms, sale price per square foot, things of that nature. So that can be really nice. That's one of the advantages of the Survey of Construction, which is actually around 800 of the largest places around the country. There's actually field reps that go out and get individual information for all those building permits every month. That can be really useful. And Helen had asked a question. Yeah, good question. So if a place boundary is changed, would all the data reflect the current boundary, or would it include data specific to the year? Yeah, so we don't work backwards like that. So once our data is out, this data is pretty much as it was that month or year it was released. So if suddenly a county incorporates a new area, or one building permit office starts issuing building permits for multiple areas, then that's not necessarily going to be reflected in the past data. So definitely something to keep in mind. We do have footnote files that you can dig through if someone is curious about annexations or boundary changes and things of that nature. Typically, sometimes it'll hit counties, but yeah, you get it a lot with MSAs where, you know, suddenly a large city or metro area might be growing and might then get added into an existing MSA, and then suddenly it could have quite a lot more square mileage, population, things of that nature, which, yeah, it's hard to do a time series with that data. Certainly a lot of places do. I think the FRED, Federal Reserve tool, they basically just roll everything back. But yeah, it's definitely something to keep in mind when looking at data over time as to how that affects those boundaries. And yeah, she had also asked, do we do imputation with non-response data? We do. So we do impute. So basically, we're always putting out a number, and that's why we have those two columns of data here. And this is the way it's been in our existing tools as well. And this is also here under the instructions, the third one down. So columns with rep, those are reported only data. So non-response is treated as a 0 in those cases. And then the other columns without rep, which are typically what you see mentioned most often, those do include imputation. And that's based on the previous year's reporting patterns, as well as that month or year, how areas might have grown in that region, just to sort of impute. So, for instance, in the Northeast, if we don't receive data for a place in the Northeast, but the rest of the Northeast has grown, then we'd look at what data we might have for them last year and then apply a factor based on the growth of places that have reported for that area. Our county and month, the most granular levels in the master data set. So we go down to the place level. All our county data is actually just made up of aggregating the lower level place data. So let me just choose, for instance, one state here. Let's do like Arkansas. And then choose place. This might take a second. And so, yeah, so place levels going to be our most granular. So cities, towns, villages, townships, things of that nature. And then those are all aggregated up for county data, and then from county to state. And then same with MSA, it's made up of all the places within that. So yeah, so that's the most granular level we go down to. So let me grab a couple. Let's see, Randa, please state again how to download data. So yeah, so that'll be available soon. We had to set up a new server, unfortunately. But once available, hopefully in the very near future, this download button right here, and you'll see that little crosstab one will be available. And I've also got information on how that will occur here if you hover over that download button as well. Randa asked, can you get data by zip code? So zip code's a tough one because zip codes can actually, they can cross over geographic boundaries. So it can be tough to try to get data by zip code. Our master file, our compiled file, does have zip codes as well as the files we put out every month. But those are actually the zip codes of where we mail the form and not necessarily representative of what that data covers. In most cases, of course, the zip code we're mailing to is probably the building permit office within that area. But especially in New Jersey, we might be mailing forms to larger state areas that handle permits. So there could be multiple zip codes. Multiple duplicate zip codes that are actually all representing different places with the data. It just happens that we mail the forms or did mail the forms. Over 95% of our data is reported online from our respondents these days, but when we used to mail forms, and that's what our file's made up of for zip codes, yeah. And thanks, Phil, for posting that link there in the chat. I meant to do that. I appreciate that. Sure. Yeah, I think that about covers it. Let me pull my contact information back up here. Easiest, nathan.croy@census.gov. If you've got any questions at all, just shoot me a message about the tool, about building permits, anything else. Happy to help you out. And, yeah, appreciate it.
Okay. I believe on that note, Nathan, that now would be a good place to close out today's webinar unless there's any other questions. One thing the other thing that I'm going to put into the chat is a link to all the construction and housing related programs from the Census Bureau. It comes from our press release for American Housing Month that we do in June, but that information is available to you year round. So I'm going to post that link real quick. If you have any questions, reach out to Nathan directly, and Nathan doesn't know the answer to a question. He'll find somebody that will. So, so thank you again to everyone for attending today's webinar. And this is going to conclude today's presentation. So stay tuned for other presentations and slides for this webinar, and those will be posted at the same place where you found the webinar, and I'll provide that link to you before I go. And have a wonderful day and a wonderful rest of your weekend. And thank you very much.
That concludes today's conference. You may disconnect at this time. Hosts, please stand by for your post-conference.